The I see red mentality. I see red refers to a psychological state where a person becomes overwhelmed by adrenaline, usually triggered by fear, rage, or sudden stress. This isn't a martial art, it's an instinctual survival response rooted in our fight or flight system. In high-stress scenarios, the body dumps adrenaline and cortisol into the bloodstream, priming you for action but impairing fine motor control and decision-making. While adrenaline can temporarily increase strength and reaction time, it comes at a cost. Cognitive processing slows and tunnel vision sets in. People often lose situational awareness, ignore basic defense, and rely on wild, untrained flailing. This makes them vulnerable to more composed or skilled opponents. The concept of fighting on instinct is appealing, but it's unreliable. Without technique, aggression turns into inefficiency, punches become sloppy, balance is lost, and energy is burned rapidly. The adrenaline dump that follows can lead to extreme fatigue, disorientation, and inability to continue defending yourself. In terms of real-world application, relying on pure emotion instead of trained technique is a high-risk approach. It may work against untrained, passive opponents, but against anyone with basic skill or composure, it fails quickly. Effective self-defense requires clarity under pressure, not blind rage. The takeaway is simple: aggression is not a substitute for preparation. Mindset matters, but without mechanics, it's not a fighting strategy. It's a liability. The gym bro. The gym bro mindset evolved throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, fueled by the rise of bodybuilding culture, Hollywood action stars, and later, social media fitness influencers. It's the belief that visible muscle mass, big arms, big chest, a shredded six-pack, translates directly into real-world fighting ability. But that belief is fundamentally flawed. Muscles without technique don't win fights. In fact, they often get in the way. Most gym bros lack footwork. Their stances are wide, flat, and unstable. They don't know how to control distance, so they overextend with wild punches that leave them off balance. Their strikes are often telegraphed and stiff, driven by brute force rather than proper mechanics. Under stress, this gets worse. The adrenaline spike in a real fight burns through energy fast, and without cardio adapted to combat, the kind built through pad work, sparring, and drills, many gym bros gas out within seconds. Muscle mass also demands more oxygen, and when panic sets in, their endurance crashes. There's also no ability to take or deliver hits correctly. Untrained fighters often punch incorrectly, risking hand injuries, and they don't know how to protect themselves when getting hit. Defensive posture collapses, and without knowledge of clinch, grappling, or escape techniques, raw strength becomes a limited tool. Size can intimidate, but it creates a dangerous illusion of power. Fighting requires skill, timing, positioning, and composure. A smaller trained fighter will almost always outclass a bigger untrained one. The gym builds muscle, not mindset or mechanics. Kung Fu. Kung Fu is an umbrella term for hundreds of traditional Chinese martial arts developed over thousands of years, often tied to Shaolin monks, Taoist philosophy, and dynastic warfare. Systems like Hung Gar, Choi Li Fut, and Northern Praying Mantis were designed for battlefield or ceremonial use, not for street-level violence. Much of modern Kung Fu is preserved for cultural heritage, not combat readiness. The problem is training methodology. Most Kung Fu styles revolve around forms, long choreographed sequences called kata or taolu. These are practiced solo with no opponent in ideal stances under ideal timing. They teach movement patterns, not real-time decision-making. There's usually no sparring, no resistance, and very little contact. That means no pressure testing, which is what builds real fighting skill. The techniques themselves often rely on outdated ideas, deep stances that limit mobility, animal-inspired movements that don't match human biomechanics, and flashy strikes that don't account for modern threats like tackles, clinches, or dirty boxing. These methods might look elegant, but they don't reflect the chaos of real violence. Kung Fu has immense historical and cultural value, but it's not structured to handle unpredictable, high-speed, full-contact encounters. Without resistance training, its practitioners lack timing, adaptability, and impact conditioning. It's not useless, but it's been preserved more as performance and tradition than as a functional self-defense system. In a street fight, choreography won't save you. Reaction, realism, and repetition will. Aikido. Aikido was developed in Japan in the early 20th century by Morihei Ueshiba, blending elements of Jiu-Jitsu and swordsmanship with a spiritual philosophy of harmony. Its goal was not to defeat an opponent, but to neutralize violence without harm. The The techniques center on joint locks, wrist manipulations, and redirecting an attacker's momentum using circular movement. The problem is that Aikido was never designed for full contact fighting. Its training assumes that the attacker will grab your wrist or throw a slow, committed punch, giving you time and structure to execute a throw or lock. That's simply not how real violence plays out. Attacks on the street are fast, chaotic, and unpredictable. Nobody throws compliant strikes or holds position while you apply a technique. More critically, Aikido lacks sparring. Without full resistance, students never learn to deal with pressure, adrenaline, or non-cooperative opponents. They train in ideal conditions that fall apart the moment real force is applied. When a technique fails, which it often does under resistance, there's no striking, clinching, or fallback plan to recover. Aikido might develop balance, posture, and flow, but without pressure testing, those traits don't translate to real-world effectiveness. Beautiful movement doesn't equal functional self-defense. In a live fight, compliance is rare, and Aikido depends on it. Jiu-Jitsu. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu evolved from traditional judo after it was introduced to Brazil in the early 20th century. The Gracie family modified it, focusing less on throws and more on ground grappling, emphasizing leverage, joint locks, and chokes to allow smaller individuals to control or submit larger opponents. BJJ became globally recognized after early UFC events, where it consistently dominated untrained fighters. In terms of control and technique, BJJ is incredibly effective. It teaches body mechanics, balance, pressure, and patience, and gives practitioners real experience through live sparring. But when it comes to self-defense in a chaotic street environment, BJJ has clear limitations. The biggest issue is that it brings the fight to the ground, which is exactly where you don't want to be if weapons or multiple attackers are involved. Pulling guard or sitting to your back might work in sport, but on concrete or asphalt, it's dangerous. There's no awareness of your surroundings when you're tangled in someone's legs and your head is inches from pavement. BJJ also lacks striking. If you can't defend against punches or elbows, your technique may break down before you get control. And while sport BJJ builds great habits for competition, it also introduces bad ones, like butt scooting, playing for points, or ignoring posture while setting up a sweep. As a base, Jiu-Jitsu is excellent, but on its own, without situational awareness, striking ability, or stand-up control, it's not enough for the street. You'll survive, but it won't always be pretty. Wrestling. Wrestling is one of the oldest combat systems on the planet, with roots going back thousands of years to ancient Mesopotamia, Greece, and Egypt. It's been a foundational part of military training, Olympic sport, and mixed martial arts. Modern wrestling, whether freestyle or Greco-Roman, is all about takedowns, control, and dominating the clinch. It builds incredible balance, explosive power, and positional awareness. As a one-on-one grappling base, wrestling is elite. Wrestlers learn how to control where the fight happens, standing or on the ground, and they're conditioned to push through exhaustion, pain, and pressure. Their ability to dictate range and neutralize opponents makes them dominant in a controlled fight. But in a street fight, the same strengths can become vulnerabilities. Wrestling teaches you to close the distance and take someone down, which is the last place you want to be if you're dealing with concrete, hidden weapons, or multiple attackers. The ground isn't padded, and while you're busy pinning one guy, his friend might be kicking you in the head. Wrestling also lacks strikes. There's no punching, no kicking, and no training for how to defend against someone throwing haymakers. That means you could take someone down, but still get cut, choked, or knocked out in the process. Wrestling is a survival tool. It gives you control, endurance, and the ability to end fights quickly, but it needs to be paired with situational awareness and striking skills. On its own, it's powerful, but incomplete for the chaos of the street. Sambo. Sambo originated in the Soviet Union in the 1920s as a hybrid combat system for military and law enforcement. Its creators combined the best of judo, traditional Russian wrestling, and other global grappling styles. There are two main branches: sport sambo, which looks a lot like judo but with more leg locks, and combat sambo, which includes striking and is used by Russian special forces. As a grappling art, sambo is solid. It teaches explosive throws, submissions, positional control, and transitional awareness, all useful in self-defense. Combat sambo adds punches, kicks, and defensive tactics, making it more well-rounded than pure grappling systems. Its emphasis on rugged conditioning and aggression gives practitioners a mental edge in high-stress scenarios. But the problem isn't the system, it's the application. Most sambo outside of Russia is sport-focused, not combat-ready. And just like with jiu-jitsu or wrestling, the emphasis is still on taking the fight to the ground, which isn't always ideal in a real-world scenario. You don't want to be tied up in a leg lock while someone's friend stomps on your spine. Also, combat sambo training, the version that includes strikes and street-relevant techniques, is rare in the West. So most practitioners aren't drilling against weapons, aren't training under chaotic conditions, and aren't preparing for environmental hazards like pavement or glass. Sambo gives you strong fundamentals in control and submissions, but without striking awareness or a way to deal with multiple attackers, it's another powerful but limited tool in the street. Muay Thai. Muay Thai, also known as the art of 8 limbs, originated in Thailand with deep military roots. It was developed not just as a sport, but as a battlefield method of close-quarters combat. Over centuries, it evolved into a devastating striking system using punches, kicks, knees, elbows, and clinch work, turning the human body into a weapon from all angles. What makes Muay Thai brutally effective in the street is its simplicity and realism. Fighters train with full contact, live sparring, and heavy conditioning. They're used to pain, chaos, and the pressure of real-time violence. There's no fantasy in Muay Thai. Everything is drilled to work under fire. Elbows cut, knees break posture, low kicks destroy balance. And the clinch isn't just a hold, it's a weaponized position used to control and punish. Muay Thai doesn't assume ideal conditions. It adapts. If someone rushes you, you frame, clinch, and counter with short-range strikes that end the fight before it escalates. There's no wasted motion, just damage. And unlike styles that rely on perfect technique or unrealistic distance, Muay Thai thrives in dirty, close-up brawls. The only real drawback is that, like boxing, it doesn't include grappling or groundwork. But with its balance of power, endurance, and reaction training, Muay Thai prepares you for the violence most people aren't ready for. It's not just striking, it's striking evolved for survival. Boxing. Boxing is one of the oldest and most refined striking arts in the world. It focuses on punches, head movement, footwork, and timing. But what makes it so effective isn't just the techniques, it's the way it's trained. Boxers don't just hit pads, they spar a lot. That means they're constantly reacting to pressure, getting hit, adapting in real time, and learning how to stay calm in chaos. In a street fight, that makes a massive difference. The ability to move your feet, slip punches, and land accurate strikes under stress is invaluable. Most street altercations happen in close quarters, and boxing is built for exactly that range. Yaps, crosses, hooks, uppercuts, these are fast, powerful, and often fight-ending when delivered by someone with proper training. Boxers also develop excellent distance control. They understand range, they know when to close in, and when to disengage. Their conditioning is elite, and they're trained to keep their composure even after taking a shot, something most untrained people can't do. But boxing isn't perfect. It has no grappling, no clinch control beyond dirty boxing, and no groundwork. If someone tackles you or drags you to the floor, a pure boxer might be in trouble. Still, in 90% of street fights, the person who lands the first clean shot wins, and that's where boxing dominates. Pressure-tested, practical, and brutally efficient, boxing is one of the most street-ready martial arts. The sprinter. There's one martial art that always wins in the street, and it doesn't involve punches, kicks, or takedowns. It's called running. The sprinter isn't a joke category. It's the mindset that prioritizes survival over ego. The reality is this: the best street fight is the one you're not in. Street violence is chaotic, unpredictable, and legally dangerous. Even if you win the physical altercation, you might lose in court or face retaliation later. That's why situational awareness, verbal de-escalation, and the ability to walk away are the most underrated self-defense tools you'll ever have. No technique can match the value of avoiding the fight entirely. Most real confrontations aren't duels. They're ambushes, group attacks, or alcohol-fueled stupidity. Even the most trained fighter is vulnerable to a sucker punch, a hidden weapon, or a second attacker jumping in. Escaping isn't cowardice, it's control, it's intelligence, and it's survival. The sprinter wins because they live to fight another day, or better yet, never have to. Martial arts can teach discipline, fitness, and mental resilience, but the highest level of mastery is knowing when not to use them. In the end, it's not about dominance. It's about staying safe, legally clean, and physically intact. That's the real win, and the real martial art.